Welcome into 5 Wide as we get into the divisional round of the NFL playoffs with some of my favorite bets. Last week, basically broke even, close to even. I think we were 4-4 in our plays. A little bit frustrated with some of the ones that I liked, specifically Tua Tagovailoa under pass attempts. He had 14 going into the fourth and ended up attempting 25 in the fourth quarter alone. Regardless, we're back here. A lot of player props. I do have one side for you. Honestly, this week is pretty tough for me in terms of what sides I want to play, so I only have one here, but a lot of player props. I'll point out ones that I really love and have a little bit extra than a regular unit on, but we'll break down each of these games. If you guys enjoy the video, if you're getting some value from this information, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We'll have plenty more content coming to you for the NFL playoffs and leading up to the Super Bowl as well. Let's jump into these matchups. We'll start, we'll go chronologically here. We're starting on Saturday with the Ravens and the Texans. The Texans on the road here as a 9.5-point dog as of the time recording this video. This number has jumped around a little bit between 8.5 and 9.5. Texans were a team that made us some money last week with that, the play on them to cover and Joe Flacco to throw an interception. But this matchup is very, very different than the one that we saw last week. And here's where I'm going with this game with the one play that I do have. It's going to be Nico Collins under 82.5 receiving yards. Okay. So last week I talked about this being a really juicy matchup against the Browns defense for Collins to produce. Not quite the same here against this Ravens defense. Both great units, obviously. He's under this number in 9 of 15 games this season with CJ Stroud at quarterback. So that's the vast majority. Of course, we've got a spot here where, they're not having Noah Brown or Tank Dell involved, so it does help, but this is a really healthy number. This is the biggest number we've seen for Nico Collins this entire year, I'm pretty sure, at over 80 yards. This is on FanDuel, 82.5 is, and he was also under in the game against Baltimore. Now, that was week 1 of the season. He had 80 yards in that game, so it's not like he was under by much. That's not really what I'm pointing at directly. So the reason I really like this play is Collins is a player that's benefited in a big way from big plays. That's what him and Stroud have been doing all season long. He's 4th in the NFL with 14 receptions of 20-plus air yards. That is something that Stroud has done fantastically. That's where they find their success. And I think Baltimore is going to do a great job taking that away, as they've done all season long. They're the second best defense on these deep ball passes. 25.4% completion percentage allowed. That's just 1 in every 4 passes being completed. And they've only given up a total of 15 completions on these passes. So likely you're only going to see 1 reception of 20-plus yards in this game. That's what the numbers tell you. Maybe even less, technically, from Baltimore playing a 17-game season. Collins is someone that's really reliant on these big plays. So there are 8 games over the course of the year that Collins has recorded 1 or less reception of 20-plus yards, which I think is where we're looking at for this game. And that was one of those games was against Baltimore in week 1. But in those 8 games, he's gone under in every single one, under his receiving total at 82.5 in all of them. So I think this is a perfect recipe. You're going to see less man coverage and more zone coverage from the Ravens, as opposed to the Browns playing a lot of man, where Collins has feasted. His yards per run is cut in almost half against zone than man, so he's less efficient against zone coverage. Baltimore, of course, a great pass defense, giving up less than 200 passing yards per game. I think this number is too big. I'm not saying Collins isn't going to be involved. I'm not saying he can't post 50, 60 yards. I just think 82.5 is too big, so I'm going to take the under there. Now I move to San Francisco and Green Bay. This is a play I have 2 units on. I love Christian McCaffrey to go over 89.5 rushing yards. This is a number he's definitely comfortable with clearing. He's over this in 5 of his last 6 games, and he's getting about 17 carries per game this season. I would expect it to be higher in, of course, a playoff game here. I gotta have it type of situation. Get their best back the ball as much as they can. And running backs of late have been in a lot of trailing game scripts against the Packers, because the Packers have been playing really well the last 3 or 4 games. So they haven't been able to feed the run game as much as their opponents haven't been able to feed the run game as much as they wanted. But some of these other opponents they played prior to that, Rashad White, Saquon Barkley, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, Najee Harris, Jalen Moore, all these guys posted 80-plus rushing yards in those matchups. This is a problem for Green Bay, and why I do think I would lean towards the Niners covering in this game. Don't love it enough to put it on here as a play, but it's the run defense that concerns me with Green Bay being able to stay in this game. The Packers are 21st in EPA against the run, 4.4 yards per carry, which is 23rd, giving up almost 130 rushing yards per game, 28th in the league. Look, last couple of games, you got the Vikings, you got the Cowboys, 2 teams that have struggled to run the ball all season, 2 teams that were trailing right pretty much from the get-go in their last couple games, haven't been able to run the ball. You haven't seen this weakness from the Packers in a few weeks. It's going to rear its ugly head in this game, and I do think you're going to see CMC be a huge benefactor of that. The Niners, again, 9.5-point favorites in wins this season. McCaffrey's over this number in 8 of 12 games. That's 66-67% of games he's over if they win, and they're pretty sizable favorites here, so the expectation is they do just that. So I really like him to go for 90, 100-plus rushing yards in this matchup. Staying in the same game, I'm going to go to Davien Wicks over under 33.5 receiving yards. You can find this number at FanDuel as well. They've got some good prices right now as it's a bit of the earlier time of the week. You're going to see a lot of zone coverage from the Niners. That's what they've been doing all season long with Steve Wilks and dating back to seasons prior with whoever their DC has been. 66% of plays, they are in zone coverage. And Wicks is a player that's really, I want you to keep on your radar because the group of guys we have here of Wicks, Dobbs, Watson, Reed, there's a lot of different options that the Packers can throw it on the field and running routes. But the last couple of weeks in which Wicks has played, he's run more routes than Jaden Reed back-to-back weeks. He ran more routes than Christian Watson did last week as well. Actually, for the last couple of weeks, Wicks has run more routes than Jaden Reed, which is surprising because you kind of see Reed as the guy that's been getting the most volume. Wicks, though, in particular, dynamic against zone coverage, able to generate some big plays, but also sees a sizable amount of his targets. 68% of his targets this year have come against zone, 40 of his 59 targets. 2.28 yards per route run. That's actually top 20 in the entire league. And he's averaging 15.6 yards per reception. So when he sees zone, he only needs a couple catches to be able to clear this number. And when you look at this game script, where you see the Packers as sizable underdogs, likely going to see them lean a bit more on the passing game. Niners have a quality run defense. I don't think their pass defense is anywhere near as good as their run defense is. So I do think this is where you're going to find some advantages for Green Bay. Also don't think Christian Watson's anywhere near 100%. So I feel pretty comfortable about Wicks' route participation in this game. If he's out there running routes, the way he performs against zone, he should get enough opportunity here to get somewhere closer to 40 than we have him closer to that 30 range in this one. So like him over 33.5 receiving yards. Now, to my first side this week, we move to the Bucs and the Lions. I'm taking the Bucs plus 6.5. I took this real early in the week. I do have 2 units on this play in particular. Took this on Sunday night as soon as the lines dropped. Thought this might move closer to 5, even 4.5. Bounced down to 6, now back up to 6.5. So you can still find this number, which is good. Tampa, love the matchup for them defensively. Stout run defense to be able to keep that Lions run game in check. The Lions want to run the ball a fair bit so that they can open up their play action game. But I don't think they'll have that play action game as much in this one because Tampa is 8th in EPA against the run. They're allowing just 3.8 yards per carry, which is 4th in the league. And they're very disciplined tackling team, 3rd in broken tackle rate allowed. And you have to be when you're a team that blitzes as much as Tampa Bay does. They lean on the blitz quite a bit, over 40% of plays, a top rate in the league. Goff, been pretty solid against the blitz, okay? 14th in yards per attempt, 13th in completion percentage, so not bad there. Does have the second most turnovers. That could be costly. You turn the ball over in this game. That could keep this Lions team from covering. He also has the 5th lowest ADOT, so you're not going to see, I think this team will have to throw a little bit more, but with the way that the Bucs blitz, I don't think the Lions will be able to effortlessly move their way down the field. It might take some time to find those scores. Detroit defensively, no doubt can take away the run game. One of the best run defenses in the league, but the Bucs haven't had much of a ground game to speak of all season, so that doesn't give me a lot of cause for concern. The Bucs have been leaning more on their pass game, more on Baker Mayfield's arm, his connection with K-Dot and Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. We've seen a few others break out in their game last week against the Eagles, but the Lions, 30th in EPA against the pass, allowing 7.8 yards per attempt, which is 31st. This is why I like the Bucs against the Eagles. I still like them here against the Lions because there's some things that I'm concerned about with this Lions team as well. Pass rush hasn't been able to convert a lot of sacks, and the coverage has been a problem. So I think 6.5 points is too many. I think this is somewhere that should be more in like the 4.5 range than the 6.5 range. And you're obviously not getting the 7, but 6 is still a key number. I will happily take 6.5 points with the Bucs in this one. All right, sticking in this game, and now to my favorite play of the weekend. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown over 7.5 receptions. So sizable number here. He's over just once in his last 7 games. But again, looking at some of these trends can be helpful, but at the same time, it can also be telling. Why is this number as high as it is if he hasn't been able to clear it? Well, we talked about this matchup and what it lends itself to for Tampa or for Detroit and their offense, what they'll have to lean on, which is the pass game. And there was the case when these two teams played earlier in the season, back in October, I think. Amon-Ra totaled 12 receptions in that game against Tampa Bay. And here's the reason why. He's a constant target for Jared Goff when blitzed. It's super impressive and sticks out huge for me and why I love this play so much. I have 3 units on this play. The low average depth of target we talked about for Goff, it's just 7 yards, right? Well, that's right in the wheelhouse of Amon-Ra St. Brown. His average depth of target this season on all targets, 7.9 yards. So this is exactly where Amon-Ra lives in the field, is where Goff wants to throw the ball when he's blitzed into those shorter areas. He also has 45 receptions when Goff is blitzed this year. The next closest player on the Lions has just 19, more than double the next closest guy, and nobody has a higher target rate than Amon-Ra St. Brown on the Lions when Goff is blitzed. 34.1% target rate. That means he's being targeted over a third of the time when Goff is blitzed. And he'll be blitzed a lot in this game, and I think the passing value will be very high because of how good the Bucs run defense is. On top of this, I'm not done with telling you how great I think this play is. Tampa's a team that plays a lot of zone coverage, zone blitz defense, right? 64% of plays there in that zone coverage. Amon-Ra, a monster against zone, okay? Demands volume, generates efficiency. He's 5th in the NFL in yards per route run against zone coverage, 2.91 yards per route run. run. He also has 74 receptions against zone, which is the 5th most in the entire NFL. Perfect spot here for Amon-Ra. 7.5 is a big number. He's going to clear it, and I'm laddering this thing up all the way to 10, which you can get, I believe, plus 310 if you take this the 10 plus, which I do like for him here. So all in on this one for Amon-Ra over 7.5 receptions. All right, final game of the weekend and the best game of the weekend. We've got the Chiefs and the Bills. I've been going back and forth in this game all week. I do lean towards the Chiefs, but I'm not quite confident enough to be able to play it. But man, the Chiefs looked back to their normal selves in that matchup with Miami, and it does give me some cause for concern for the Bills, even though this is Mahomes' first road playoff game of his career. But what I am going to play is James Cook over 81.5 rushing plus receiving yards. So we'll get into each of these, why I like the rushing and why I like the receiving and why I want to combo them together. Went over this number in their matchup with Kansas City earlier this year. He had 141 yards in that game against Kansas City, and 83 of those yards came in the receiving game. So like the receiving profile for this one as well. KC is a team that's been giving up a fair bit to running backs as of late. They were the worst team in the league in the receiving game to running backs last year. They have shored that up. They're not allowing as much in the receiving game, but as of late, been a bit of a struggle. 9 of the last 12 running backs have cleared their receiving line against Kansas City over the course of, I think this is the last 5-6 games, maybe, 5-6 games. What I'm looking at here as well with that, obviously the receiving game, I think there's great, this points to playing him there. And as well, KC's a team that dials up the blitz quite a bit. 30%. Spagnuolo has been bringing it up a fair bit as opposed to what was going on earlier in the year. 30% ranked 6th in the league. And then against the Bills back in December, he actually blitzed Josh Allen on 36.7% of plays. So even a bump above their average on the year. Cook, pretty good against the blitz. 22.4% target rate when Allen is blitzed. And he's averaging over 10 yards per reception, which doesn't sound like a big number, but for running backs, that is a sizable number because you're usually seeing your running backs at a much lower yards per reception, certainly not in the double digits. So that's great for him in the receiving game. Love that there. Then in the running game, Kansas City, I think their biggest issue has been their run defense this year. The run defense ranks 26th in EPA against the run, and they're allowing 4.5 yards per carry, which is 25th. Cook's volume has definitely picked up in the latter half of the year. Latavius Murray has kind of been out of the picture a little bit. We've seen some of Ty Johnson, but I feel like this team is getting a little bit more confident in giving Cook the football at a good volume. In the last 5 games, over 18 carries per game. We get that volume in this matchup, combine that with the receiving opportunity and what he's done against this Kansas City team, definitely something to want to play. Over 81.5 rushing plus receiving. All right, to recap for you guys, we're on Nico Collins, under 82.5 receiving yards. We're on Christian McCaffrey, over 89.5 rushing yards. We're also on Davien Wicks, over his receiving yards at 33.5. The Bucs plus 6.5. Amon-Ra over 7.5 receptions. And then finally, we just talked about it with James Cook over his rushing and receiving. Guys, again, appreciate you guys for watching this video. If you got some valuable information from these games from me, I would really appreciate if you did hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well. We'll have more coming for the championship games. If you guys are looking for more insight and plays, we'll be live on our Twitch on Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. previewing these games even further in depth. We will see you guys on the next one.